you're trusting users with like, hey, here's this USB stick that's got $1 million on it. You've got to decide like, do I keep this plugged into my computer and then hackers can basically get at it whenever they want, or do I not keep it? And then every time I want to like send $10 to a friend, I've got to go upstairs, get it out of my safe deposit box, whatever.
Like, how would you launch an application in crypto today?
Why do we need more than one CLOB?
As far as we know, we're kind of the only stack that gets out of your way and just lets you build the thing that your users want.
Welcome back to the Rollup. We are your hosts. I'm Andy.
I'm Robbie, and this is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Welcome, Preston. First time on the Rollup, man. What's up, man? How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Hell yeah, man. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee right now.
Oh, dang. Big weekend ahead, huh?
I actually live here, so probably nothing too crazy. A lot of code to write this weekend, I'm afraid, but it should be good.
Mostly vibe coding.
Vibe coding? What are your favorite AI tools to help you vibe code? Try out GPT-5 yet?
I haven't played with GPT-5 yet. Probably over the weekend I'll get a little bit in. I mostly use Claude Code these days, although I also have Cursor. But I found Claude to be the best, at least lately.
I used GPT-5 yesterday to build a flyer for a party invite. It was pretty sick. It was really, really fast. That was my first time.
Great use of AI, yeah.
It was really silly. It was like I told it what to do, like exact text, and it misspelled 3 words 4 times. I had to send the same prompt 4 times to get the right text. It was really weird.
That's really funny. Early days, I guess.
All right, Preston, quick background on yourself, man. Would love to understand like who you are, where you come from, how you got into the space, some of the stuff that you're most passionate about, your general thesis on the space. Just like broadly, first time on the show, introduce yourself to our audience. I'm sure a lot of them know you kind of through mutuals, etc. But Rob and I don't. So would love to start there.
Perfect, yeah. I'm Preston Evans. I'm the CTO at Sovereign Labs, where I've been for the past 3.5 years or so. Before that, I was over at Amazon Web Services doing some of their crypto stuff. And before that, I was in school and doing some open source work in my spare time. So I've been kind of broadly in the crypto space for forever. I always tell people I probably heard about Bitcoin back in 2013 or so, and was always vaguely interested in it. I was still, in middle school or high school at the time, so didn't do that much with it, but sort of became technical through learning about Bitcoin. And I remember watching Ethereum launch, watching the DAO hack, all that stuff. So what I'm really interested in is kind of pushing the frontiers of what's possible on chain. From the very early days, it's kind of been obvious to a lot of the cypherpunk people that if you can make everything in the world go on chain naturally, if you could fit anything you wanted on chain, then there's lots of room to make a better world. But the question has always been okay, but how do we actually do that? Bitcoin does 7 transactions per second or something like that. Ethereum's in that same ballpark, low tens of transactions per second. And so at those rates, you're just never going to bring useful things on chain, right? For beyond very core financial applications. So I've always been interested in how can we bring other stuff on chain and just have a less intermediated world, let people interact more directly with the people around them.
And are you consider yourself a libertarian or not really?
I would say I'm maybe more libertarian than average, but not a hardcore libertarian. I definitely think there's lots of room for government to do useful things in society. But I would also love to see lower taxes, more freedom for individuals to choose their, what they want to do, all those sorts of things. But one of the things I love about crypto is that it sort of works well regardless of your political philosophy. Crypto is really it's okay in the States. It does some good things for us here in the States. But where it really matters is if you don't have a functional government. And so, if you're in Tanzania or Uganda or any of these countries where on any given day, anything about your built environment could change. The legal system may work great for a while or may fall completely apart depending on what happened in all sorts of places, close by or far away. So anyway, I'm excited about being able to just you can build a system that just works and then anybody can opt into it. And that's really, really powerful, where right now you can't really opt into a different government.
This is the network state model.
A little bit. Yeah. I think those ideas have been floating around in the ether for a long time. Balaji's maybe a little bit more like he wants to build a real physical state as well, or at least like an agglomeration of people. I think thinking of this as a state is maybe the wrong model for what I think crypto's most exciting promise is, right? We don't need to have everybody in the world be totally subordinate to crypto. It's just like WhatsApp, like you wouldn't say WhatsApp is a state. WhatsApp is just a useful tool, but like anybody can use it. It kind of just works. And it works great even in, all these countries where you have very limited bandwidth, you don't have super great infrastructure. Crypto will be the same thing for sort of legal infrastructure, for financial rails, for some forms of contracts, and then for some forms of trust as well. If you can move some identity primitives on chain, there's a lot of room to sort of make it easier to interact with somebody that you don't know well without having the backstop of a totally trustworthy legal system like we mostly have here in the States.
Yeah, definitely. I follow this guy on YouTube. He's like Nomadic Capital. He has this saying where it's like, go where you're treated best. And I think that like, obviously you can't just like escape your government or escape your country that easily, but I don't know, there is something to be said about existing in places where you're treated better and things are better than in others. But obviously this is like a kind of like a first world privilege more than anything, I suppose. But I just think that, I think Rob and I are with you on the ability for this kind of online internet currency, let's call it, or money, and all the properties that comes with it, being able to kind of give you more freedom and allow you to opt out or opt in. And so, these types of things are important, and I think are often understated in the speculative, technology-driven kind of cycles, if you will. Speaking of which, Preston, I know that you guys just announced some of the Sovereign stack, and we'll get into that. But my question for you today is, if you were to build an app right now in crypto, where would you launch it, or how would you build it? Would you launch it on Solana? Would you launch it on Base, Ethereum mainnet? Would you launch your own chain? Would you do a special chain? How would you launch an application in crypto today? Where would you build?
Well, boy, that's a tough question, because really my whole thought is that you shouldn't care where you launch. Like, your users won't care. Crypto native people sort of do care today, but that's like an artifact of this weird sort of jank of history where we have this like really hardcore group of true believers who've been in crypto for like 7 to 10 years and really feel strongly that like Ethereum has the best values, or Solana is the most pragmatic and will ship the fastest. But like normies don't care at all. They have no clue what Base or Solana is. And so we want to get to a world where it's like, okay, I couldn't tell you if WhatsApp runs on Laravel or if it runs on Next.js. I have no clue. I don't care. If I go work there, I'll care for a while, but like, that's just not something that users should care about. If users don't care, then we shouldn't care. It should just be a means to an end. So that's the future I'm excited about. That's actually sort of one of the core goals of Sovereign SDK, is to let you deploy wherever you want and just, don't think about your backend. Your backend's just going to work, and then build a feature that your users want. All that being said, I think there's some obvious winners in the last couple of years. Solana has been very pragmatic, and that's really paid off in terms of, really the core problem in crypto to date has been there's not enough throughput. And so apps get popular and then they drive away all their users because they, fees go crazy or you can't land transactions. And Solana has done the best job so far of navigating those dynamics. So if I was, if I couldn't use the Sovereign SDK, I would probably look at Solana first. But depending on the app, there's really valid trade-offs. There's great reasons to be on Ethereum. There's great reasons to be on Base. There's lots of good chains out there, but hopefully chains become a lot less important over time.
Maybe it's worthwhile unpacking the Sovereign stack for us. Like, what are some of the components to it? Why did you build it in the way that you did? Generally, what's kind of the elevator pitch for the Sovereign stack?
Yeah. So the goal of Sovereign SDK is to do two things. Number one is to give builders enough scale that they can have their app actually work. So I vividly remember like watching CryptoKitties back in the day, and it got really popular by crypto standards, meaning it was doing like, 10, 20, 30 transactions every second. And everything just exploded, right? The whole thing didn't work at all. And so then as an app developer, it's like, well, why the heck would I ever try to use crypto? If my app gets even moderately popular, then it's going to blow up and it's going to go down and I lose all my profits and it just doesn't work, right? So scale has been the single thing that holds back crypto the most so far. So at Sovereign, we want to fix that, right? We want to give you enough scale that like you can actually build a reasonable app. You can get users and you don't have to worry that you'll go down because some competitor of yours or some neighbor of yours got really popular, or that you'll go down because you got really popular. Both of those are terrible. And both of those happen all the time in crypto today. Right? There's a hot NFT drop and suddenly like you can't land a transaction anywhere. All of your users are losing money and it's a nightmare. So number one, we wanted to solve like, get you reasonable dedicated throughput so that if your app gets popular, it can survive and it doesn't get taken down randomly. Number two, we really wanted to see builders be able to focus much more on building the features that their users really want. And on an existing L1, that's just really hard, right? So like, think of, the most basic stuff in crypto. Like there's been hacks for the last 10 years, like clockwork, every 6 months to a year, big high profile hacks. And a ton of that comes down to the fact that we just don't have very solid basic security infrastructure, right? Like account abstraction is in its infancy. For most of history, there has been no account abstraction, which means that basically you're trusting users with like, hey, here's this USB stick that's got $1 million on it. You've got to decide like, do I keep this plugged into my computer? And then hackers can basically get at it whenever they want, or do I not keep it? And then every time I want to like send $10 to a friend, I've got to go upstairs, get it out of my safe deposit box, whatever. So basically, there's just no way to experiment as a builder. You have no control over the primitives. And to be honest, like the primitives are one of the things that matters the most. And so I'd love to see a world where we ran all sorts of crazy experiments. Like, okay, maybe we do social recovery wallets. Maybe we, now we're starting to get these like MPC-based multi-sig solutions, all this fancy stuff. But it's taken years and years because nobody has control over the chain's roadmap. And so like as a developer, I can't just go in and be like, hey, I'm going to build this cool new wallet. It's going to work great. Or if it doesn't work, then like we'll shut down the company. We'll try again another year, right? So Sovereign is really built to give you control, where you can run all these experiments. You're not locked into some existing chain. You can control anything you want about the chain. And hopefully that means that you can build much more differentiated user experiences. You can, get rid of the 2-click, like we're all driven nuts by the 2-click process to do anything on chain. You've got to approve first and then transfer.
Oh my gosh. Dude,
nobody would live with 2 clicks in the Web 2 world, but we're stuck with it because that's part of the chain.
Introducing Asset Runes, the future of decentralized finance. Stablecoins natively on Bitcoin. Hedge against volatility. Diversify your portfolio. All directly from your Bitcoin wallet. Secured by ZK technology. This is Asset Runes. Available now, exclusively on Starknet. Preston, could you talk to us like a bit more of like some of the tech, like the actual tech choices that you guys made on execution, on like transaction logic, on sequencing, on just like I saw this bullet list of these things that you guys really prioritize, and I just like to go through it and understand it just a bit better.
Sure, yeah, I'm more than happy to. So what we've done is we built a whole new stack completely from the ground up. We basically don't reuse any code from any of their blockchains. That's not strictly true. There's some components that like we have a whole Ethereum stack for compatibility, so you can use your Ethereum wallet. But like Ethereum's not really a first-class citizen, and we just provide compatibility for you. So everything's tailor-made from the ground up to give you a totally reimagined experience building a blockchain. So some things that means. Number one, you can deploy your rollup on top of basically any base blockchain. So you can deploy on Celestia, you can deploy on Ethereum, you can deploy on Solana, you can deploy even on Bitcoin. Now, not all of those are fully production ready today. In fact, I think only 1 or 2 of them are, but in principle, you can do all of them, and we have proofs of concepts for many of those chains already, and more in the works. So as a builder, basically, you can go where your users are, or you can pick the chain that makes the best technical trade-offs for you and not be locked into a particular DA layer, particular whatever. And then we do the same thing with our proof system. We support RISC-0, we support SP1. We'll have support for a couple of others coming down the pipe pretty soon here. So basically, we're a super configurable, framework for building rollups. But then the core piece of the rollup is maybe the thing we've invested the most in. So we sort of took a step back and we said, like, what do I actually want if I'm building a blockchain? And people have said for years that the thing that's important is decentralization. We think they're wrong. We think that what you want is what decentralization gets you, which is censorship resistance and verifiability. And so we went with a rollup focused architecture because rollups let you have some of the best things about decentralization. You can get censorship resistance and you can get verifiability, but then also some of the best pieces of centralization where you can have, some weakly trusted server that sits between you and the rollup. And then you don't have to download hundreds of gigabytes of random full node data to interact with the thing. You can get real Web 2 like latencies. So what we have is basically a sequencer that can accept, a couple thousand transactions per second today. Hopefully that'll 5 to 10x in the coming months or year. And it can respond to you within 10 milliseconds, pretty much universally. So what that means is, as a developer, everything feels incredibly snappy. If you're on Ethereum, typical latencies are 6 to 10 seconds. That means you need a spinner on your home screen to wait while the transaction loads and goes through and gets processed. For us, you know exactly what happened within 10 milliseconds. That's not just your transaction was accepted. We can tell you exactly what happened with your trade on Uniswap. What was the price? What was your slippage? All of that stuff. Exactly what it was within 10 milliseconds.
But Preston, is that even that important? Because I think our reaction time is 200 milliseconds or 250, right?
Yeah.
Why is 10 milliseconds so important for you guys? Is it just from a pure latency gaming perspective of people trying to, front run and operate on chain with algorithmically programmed trading strategies basically, or kind of why so fixated on this speed?
Yeah, so it's a really good point. Frankly, we might make it slower in the future because, humans don't care beyond 200 milliseconds or so, like you said. On the other hand, there's lots of other components that do add latency, like the front end needs some time. So shorter is usually better. But we also care a lot about being able to bring financial markets on chain. And for those, you need super low latency because of HFT. So you've got your market maker who's sort of hey, I'm always willing to trade with anybody at at whatever the going rate is. And so he'll say hey, I'm willing to sell, $1 million worth of ETH at $3,000 today. And then if the price moves, he's still happy to trade with you, but he wants to trade it at the new price. And so he needs to cancel that order quickly. And if you beat him to the punch, if the price moved and you get your order in before he did, then he loses money. So one of my friends compares it to picking up pennies in front of a bulldozer. If you're slow getting your order in, then somebody takes you for $100,000, $1 million. If you're fast, then maybe you made a couple bucks trading with some random normie who's wanting to trade their ETH for soul or something, right? So market makers care a ton about being able to reliably get their order in before HFT does. And so for that, latency is super, super important.
Okay, so then let's use a practical example, right? Bullet is built on Sovereign Stack. They're effectively a L2 on Solana, a network extension, whatever you kind of want to call it. How is Bullet's use case, which is effectively what you're talking about right now, how is that enabled by Sovereign Stack? What do you enable for them? Why did they choose Sovereign to build what they're building?
Yeah, so there's a few core components that are super, super important. Number one is latency. As far as we know, we're the fastest chain. In fact, according to our internal benchmarks, we're actually faster than Binance in most cases. So that's a huge thing. Binance, apparently in the exchange world, crypto exchanges aren't thought of in the same category as sort of real exchanges. And so market makers actually want better performance than you can get from Binance. So we're hopeful that we can provide that. We're in the early days, so I'm sure there'll be hiccups along the way, but the architecture can get us there. And we've spent a lot of work sort of getting to the point where we can compete with Binance and all these other centralized exchanges. So that's one huge thing, latency. A second huge thing is throughput. Hyperliquid does 12,000 transactions per second, something like that. And if you're on Solana, that's 3 or 4 Solanas worth of capacity. If you're on Ethereum, that's 100 Ethereum's worth of capacity, something like that. So there was just nobody who was even in the ballpark of that. You've got these new chains, Mega ETH, Monad, that may get you somewhere close to that. But that's, for a single app, that's just for one exchange, and you want lots and lots of apps. So we were the only team that could give them the latency and the throughput, I think, that they needed. But then we really take advantage of being able to give them control. So they have a super Solana native feeling experience. We let them use Solana addresses and Solana wallets to control all the actions on the rollup. So you're not, if you're on Hyperliquid, you might feel like you're switching to a different ecosystem, right? If you're coming from Solana, then you got to get an Ethereum wallet, Ethereum addresses, learn all the EVM stuff to interact with Hype EVM or whatever. For Bullet, we can give them a super Solana native feeling experience, no new wallets, none of that stuff. And then, we also let them configure some speed bumps. So that's one of Hyperliquid's killer features, is being able to, help market makers out by slowing down HFT just a little bit. We can do that. That'd be basically impossible to do on top of Ethereum today. You just don't have that kind of control over the protocol. So, those are the main reasons, really. Like, as far as we know, we're kind of the only stack that gets out of your way and just lets you build the things that your users want, because we're not designed to be like an existing chain first. We just, okay, if somebody needs configuration on this thing, we add a configuration option. You get full control over your stack, and you can decide whatever you want.
Yeah, and that there's power in that flexibility, because then you're kind of embracing your community's creativity and opening up the world to them. And so I'm curious, like, you guys are intimately familiar with your own technology, right? You don't have all the time and the bandwidth in order to go build out all these cool apps that are enabled by your technology. If you were to kind of put a call to action out there, what do you think are some applications? Maybe they're in the machine economy, bot to bot. Maybe they're maybe they're non-financial use cases. What do you think are some apps that are uniquely enabled by Sovereign Stack that app developers, if they're looking for some inspiration, these are some good ideas for the Sovereign Stack?
Yeah. So, I mean, the big one, the obvious one, is exchanges. We think we're the first stack that really can let you build a competitive exchange experience, but on chain. So that's a no-brainer. We're also pretty excited about a lot of like the stablecoin use cases. Right now, if you want to provide a payment provider, again, like, you're going to be super bottlenecked by throughput. If you get popular, you're in huge trouble. Sovereign gives you enough throughput and good enough latency that, like, your customers won't be waiting at the ATM while their payment is processed. There's no noticeable lags and all that stuff. So payments are another big one. And then I'm excited about, like, there's a whole category of kind of developer tooling, more boring stuff that would benefit from having an immutable record of when it happened. Think even of like tweets, right? We've all seen the, like, this tweet has been deleted screenshot of tweets. And in that case, it's really hard to know, like, is this a real tweet that the guy actually deleted, or is this a fake tweet somebody generated with ChatGPT, right? It'd be really great if putting stuff on chain was cheap enough, like, just put all your tweets on chain, and then you can prove, like, hey, actually, I never tweeted that. Here you go. Here's the log of that block. It's not in there. Or here you go. It is in that block. It's, whatever. So, thinking of blockchains just as like whatever we want a record of actually happening, put it on the chain. It's cheap now. It's almost free now. And so really get creative with it. Yeah.
Preston, if you were to build one app, what would you build? Like, what would be a passion project of yours?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm really excited about a lot of the privacy stuff that's coming down the pipe.
Okay.
So yeah, I would probably work on some privacy oriented stuff, maybe financial, but also maybe non-financial, like some of the more identification stuff. It's kind of a hot topic right now with, like, all of the, the UK has their new online privacy or online, like, security law that's, targeted at whatever, protecting kids. Having some age verification that is not every website I ever visit seeing, my full name sounds really great right now. Like, you can easily generate a ZK proof that, like, hey, I really do have a government ID that shows I'm over 18 or over 21 or whatever. And then you can use that credential rather than actually having to KYC at every website, because we've seen how that ends, right? I'm sure you guys all saw the T-app fiasco a couple of weeks ago, where, like, all of the driver's license they collected got leaked online, and now
that's pretty bad.
Your real name with, like, the random mean tweet you sent about some guy.
Rob, did you see that?
It feels like that kind of thing happens every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, there's,
Rob,
like,
did you see that specific T one?
The T-app.
Yeah. You've seen that, right?
I think so. What was special about that one?
It's just like this, like, reputation system for dating for women, for rating guys, basically. And then they just leaked all these guys' information. And it's created by a gay guy as well. It's a super funny story, dude. It's super funny. Preston, so you mentioned trading for exchanges. Hyperliquid is a cool example of this kind of like CLOB example, right? Centralized limit order book. These have been popular on the NASDAQ, on the CME, right? I'm curious from your perspective, is there one precise way that you think is the best in terms of assessing the trade-off spectrum for building a CLOB? Like, is there a best practice right now today with the given tools we have to build a CLOB in order to like achieve maximum viability on the spectrum of like speed, security, decentralization effectively, or whatever the kind of trilemma is?
Introducing SummerFi, one of DeFi's oldest and most battle-tested platforms. SummerFi automates your exposure to DeFi's highest quality yield so you can sit back and enjoy this summer. Deposit stablecoins like USDC or USDT and let SummerFi route your funds into optimized, low-risk lending strategies. With over 100 million in instant liquidity and support for over 34 protocols across Ethereum, Arbitrum, and more, you always stay in control. Choose from a wide range of curated strategies reviewed by independent risk experts, all in just a few clicks. So why work hard for your yield when you can be lazy? Start earning now at summer.fi, the home of the lazy summer protocol.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to build a CLOB, there's a couple of like absolutely must-haves. There's no point in building a CLOB, basically, if you're going to be slower than a couple hundred milliseconds. Like, market makers just can't make money, and so you will never get price discovery on there. And that's what we've seen over and over again with all these exchanges. So I think like basically don't waste your time building something that's going to be too slow or that's not going to have enough throughput to provide whatever you think your target market is. And not everybody needs thousands of TPS. You know, maybe you're trading like long tail, you know, NFTs or altcoins or whatever, and you only need a few, you know, tens or hundreds of transactions per second. But you've got to look at what's the maximum latency we can accept, what's the minimum throughput we can accept. Beyond that, you obviously want more battle tested. And to be honest, like this is where Sovereign SDK, you know, is going to come out worse in the rankings. We're brand new. We've got our first people going to production in a couple of weeks here. And so like, you know, I want to be honest, we think we've done everything we can to make it solid. We've got audits, all those sorts of things. But like, okay, as a builder, you've got to be really pragmatic about the risks you're taking as well. So, you know, I would look seriously at Sovereign SDK for sure, because we give you throughput, we give you the latency you need. But if you don't think you need those things, if you think you can get away with Solana or Aptos or one of these high throughput chains, you know, definitely think about it. What I would say though is that Sovereign SDK should be way cheaper, way faster, way more secure than building your own thing, unless you are like an incredibly well-funded, deeply technical team. Like maybe if you've got 3 years and an army of PhDs, it's worth building your own chain. But in the vast majority of cases, we can give you 90% of what you could get from that, but in a much more battle-tested, you know, a stack that already exists and you know, is a little more tested and proven.
So, okay,
Preston,
so then with that thought, then, yeah, just one last follow-up, Rob. Do you think Solana's value prop is being like cannibalized by something like Hyperliquid, or just these or like a mega ETH that can just like that is much more optimized for CLOBs in the current state? Like if Solana can only do like 2 or 3K TPS right now, obviously it's climbing. It looks strong, like it's, you know, up and to the right. But, you know, you need a certain amount of throughput for these exchanges to actually work. Like how do you see like Solana and like the Hyperliquid kind of like battle play out? Like, you know, maybe Bullet, you know, helps Solana's value prop here, kind of in the same way that L2s help Ethereum. Like, how do you see Solana's role in this kind of like high throughput CLOB, like 10, 20, 50K TPS world that it seems like we're rapidly getting to?
Yeah, I mean, to start off, like Solana is an incredibly impressive chain. Anatoly's a great founder, Anatoly and Raj. So like never fade Solana. I don't think I would count Solana out, probably ever. That being said, they have a much, much harder task ahead of them if they want to compete in this world than Hyperliquid does, where Hyperliquid got a chance to design from scratch, knowing exactly what they wanted to go after and learning from all the mistakes that Ethereum and Solana and all the others made along the way. Where Solana has been deployed for years, they've got all of these other applications that they really can't break, right? You can't break Jupiter. You don't want to break all, you know, pumped up fun, all of these other things that are going on chain. And so you can't make as aggressive, you know, decisions around hard forking all those things as Hyperliquid can. Hyperliquid is fairly centralized. It sounds like they control a quorum of validators that they can upgrade whenever they want. And that isn't enough on its own to hard fork the chain. And so if they want to ship a feature, they can do so very, very aggressively. Solana doesn't have that advantage. What Solana does have is really good developer mindshare, and then like an incredible killer team of engineers working on the protocol. So, you know, I wouldn't count Solana out by any means, but I think Solana in a straight head-to-head versus Hyperliquid for exchange use cases is going to have a hard time. If they manage to pull that off, that'll be like an incredible win and a testament to how strong they are. But Hyperliquid definitely has it easier.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so then, yeah, Robin, I know that you have a question, but I guess like the decision becomes like, it is building the end game CLOB like the most valuable thing to do on blockchain infrastructure today? Like, is that what's going to generate the most fees, the most revenue, the best tool and product to rival that of a centralized exchange or like NASDAQ? And like, if the answer is yes, then it would seem like a lot of these kind of high throughput L1s would want to be restructuring their kind of agenda towards and kind of roadmap towards achieving that outcome. But I don't know. Yeah.
I'll just kind of build on that, because my question was somewhat similar. Like, why do we need more than one CLOB? What is there such a thing as an end game CLOB where all the liquidity coalesces? If CLOBs are the killer exchanges or the killer use case of Sovereign, like, why is it important that we have some diverse ecosystem of exchanges rather than just one killer?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a handful of reasons you might want that. So one thing you can do is like look at traditional financial markets. And we've got like NASDAQ, we've got NYSE, and then we've also got like, other products. There's the, futures exchange in Chicago. And then like, Forex happens in a different spot. You've got markets in London, you've got markets in Singapore or in, Hong Kong, whatever. So we see that like different geographies want different kinds of markets, different regulatory environments, different kinds of products need different kinds of things. And it's very, very hard for one team to specialize in all of those things at once. And so we just in practice have never seen one team totally run away with all financial exchange. In particular, in crypto, we talk to teams all the time who are building exchanges, and there's a million different kinds of things. So there's perps, there's spot exchanges, but then there's like much more niche, like, okay, I only want to exchange stablecoins with other stablecoins. That probably has some architectural differences that you want to do. Then there's like, real world assets. There's sort of like all the NFTs, all the not strictly financial assets, but that you may still want to provide liquidity for. So there's this massive range of different designs to be explored. And, maybe we'll get some big winners down the road in a lot of these categories. But right now, like most of them are wide open. There's not even a single big player in most categories that people care about, I think.
Got it. Makes total sense. I mean, there's going to be different winners for different categories, different regional markets, different asset classes. And then we're going to connect all of these with the various infrastructure, plumbing, bridges, tunnels, technologies to bridge all this liquidity together and get really good price discovery, probably, hopefully, better than traditional financial price discovery. Preston, thanks so much for coming on.
I'm not done yet. I don't know if Preston, if you have some more time, I just have some more thoughts here.
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
Okay, so when you've been building out the stack, what is it that the builders have valued the most about Sovereign Stack, or like what are their main needs? Let's use Bullet with Tristan as an example, and then like what is something that you built out, on the contrary, that you thought that these teams would really need and want, but you're not yet seeing the demand for that specific service or part of the stack quite yet. That's kind of like throwing you off guard a bit.
Yeah, sure. So I think the big thing that people have really said they like about the stack so far is actually how easy it is to build. If you want to build an exchange on Solana, you've got to deal with all these contract size limits, all these transaction size limits that are very, very painful to work around. And so you can't just naturally express your business logic. With Sovereign SDK, we hope to be like an order of magnitude better on that. We can get rid of all the size limits and just make it much more natural. It feels a lot more like you're writing like, I don't know, just regular old code, but verifiable. So that's a big one that people have liked a lot so far. Obviously, latency is another huge one. That honestly wasn't a focus of ours in the very early days. We were building base rollups way back in the day that had sort of 6-second block times. And that was like, there was incredibly strong customer demand for lower latency. So we really pushed on that. On the other side, some stuff that we built, there's been a lot of things that we've built over the years that hasn't made it to market or isn't fully ready yet. So one big one, we thought we would need more block exploring infrastructure. It turns out a lot of people don't want that much from their block explorer. Like they're building an app chain, and so their front end is kind of in place with the block explorer, and they may have like some sort of primitive thing, but typically there's not a lot of demand for like Etherscan style block explorers. Another big one is sort of fully proof-based bridging. We thought that was going to be a huge value add for customers, and for the most part, they aren't too concerned about operating a more trusted Hyperlane style bridge for now. So we'll see if that changes. That could pick up pretty soon here, but yeah, so far there hasn't really been a lot of demand for that.
And
of innovation, just real quick, like when it comes to multi-chain and app chains, like you guys are pushing boundaries. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit more trusted of a bridge setup, but you have 10 millisecond latency. Like there are things that you guys are pushing the boundaries of, and maybe there's compromises, but ultimately there's a particular design space that you guys have embraced, and there's a lot of opportunity there because we haven't seen projects and infrastructure quite at this limit.
Yeah, that's what we hope. We hope it's working.
Preston, what is the business model of Sovereign? How are you guys going to be able to make money and to fit in this revenue meta, bro? Because if you're not making revenue, you're not going to make it. That's what they're saying these days. I don't know if I buy it, but what's the sustainability path for you guys here?
Yeah, we completely agree with that. Actually, we think if you don't have revenue, you're not going to make it. The 2017 meta of like tokens with no revenue having a huge premium is long gone and should be. So we haven't thought about launching a token because we don't have a coherent story around how it would actually accrue long-term cash flows from our business. But if we get to the point where we think that makes sense, we might consider it, right? So the business model is just a revenue share. We've got some components that are not proprietary, but we have some components like the very low latency sequencer. If you want to use those components and you use them to build a killer app, then we take a revenue share off of that app. It's totally permissionless. You can deploy without talking to us. And then there's just a fee switch built in that we can toggle if so you sort of agree with that in the license, but you're free to deploy and we won't take anything on day one.
Got it.
Just had a 5-jet
flyover.
It was almost like I was at the Super Bowl here. It's pretty insane. Preston, do you imagine that the revenue that you'll be able to get from teams like Bullet and others to be significant enough to even out costs, eventually be profitable, then kind of turn that into thoughts around token, or how are you guys thinking about the early stage that you're at now into profitability and then into community ownership? What does that look like in your mind for Sovereign?
Yeah. So yeah, if Bullet were to do well, that would absolutely be enough to make us profitable. That's one great thing about our model is we're very incentive aligned with our customers. We really want to make sure you're successful, which is not the case for necessarily all of the other Rollup frameworks that charge kind of a flat fee or whatever. So yeah, that's absolutely would be enough to make us profitable. And to be honest, we haven't thought too much about since we don't have a token, how we would incorporate one or anything like that. There are interesting questions about okay, if this becomes successful and there's broader interest in the software, how do we sort of transition ownership more into the community and out of the hands of the company to make sure that it sticks around well beyond our company lifetime. But for now, we're kind of in the early days and enjoying that fact. We get to run as a regular business and just try to focus on helping customers make a great product. So
yes.
So we'll see, I guess.
Yes, brother. Thank you for your time, Preston. I appreciate you, man. Rob, you got anything else?
I think we're good. I mean, that was great stuff. I'm very excited to see the ecosystem flourish on Sovereign. Best of luck, guys.
And congrats on the announcement. I know it's been a lot of time shipping with no hype, so it's bullish.
Thanks a ton. Yeah, it's been a grind. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I hope to be back sometime soon.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man. We'll catch up in a couple months to see where you guys are at.
Sounds great.
All right, buddy. Speak
Thanks,
soon.
Preston.
Cheers, man.